Hi, I'm Stuart Chamberlin, president of Chamberlin Financial in Boca Raton, Florida. Why do you think the U.S. government forces you to take required minimum distributions starting at age 70 and a half? The simple answer is that the government loves what I refer to as use-specific plans. 529 college tuition plans are one example. They're extremely tax efficient for the investor if they're used for college for your children or grandchildren, but extremely tax inefficient if used for retirement. IRAs, on the other hand, are a use-specific plan designed to encourage people to save money for retirement. Therefore, if the money is used for retirement, it's taxed in a friendly manner. If it's used for anything else, it's not. The fact is that one of the biggest struggles and concerns the IRS has today is the same concern that the Social Security Administration has and that individual investors have. It's the fact that we are now living longer and longer. According to data from the National Center for Health Statistics in 2017, the average life expectancy for Americans is 78.6 years. Also, according to a study done by the Hamilton Project, 34% of 65-year-old women and 22% of 65-year-old men will make it to age 100. That means roughly 1 out of 4 of those who retire in their mid-60s, 28% to be exact, will need to plan for a 35-year retirement. The reality is that longevity makes planning for retirement more difficult today than ever before. This is beginning to drive the Social Security Trust Fund into the red, and it's what most concerns individual investors, the fact that they must plan for a longer retirement than their parents. Lastly, when it comes to RMDs, the IRS simply does not want to wait to get their tax money at your death because, God forbid, you might live to be 100 years old. Simply put, because these IRAs are designed for retirement income, the government wants to make sure that you use them for that purpose. So how do I calculate my required minimum distributions? The simplest answer for IRAs is to use IRA Publication 590. It gives you, for each age past 70, a government-assumed life expectancy. As it turns out, that government-assumed life expectancy is actually much longer than your statistical life expectancy. To calculate RMDs, you simply have to take the balance of your IRAs on December 31st of the previous year and divide it by this life expectancy factor. So at age 70 and a half, that RMD becomes equal to approximately 3.7% of your IRA balance. It then increases every year you get older because, of course, your life expectancy gets shorter. The penalty for not taking sufficient RMDs each year after age 70 and a half is a whopping 50%. So you'll want to do this calculation correctly. However, as you can imagine, it's not quite as easy as that, and there are some complications. First, certain kinds of annuities have to be separated from that basic calculation, and the RMDs, these annuities, have to be calculated differently. Specifically, we're referring to annuities that are annuitized or have to be annuitized at some point down the road. These types of annuities serve to increase the dollar amount of your RMDs and therefore also increases the amount of taxes due on these RMDs. The other exception is when one has IRAs but also has a qualified plan such as a 401k, a 403b, or a 457 plan. The RMDs from the IRA and each type of qualified plan must be calculated and made separately. They cannot be commingled. That's one of the major reasons most people roll over their qualified plans into IRAs before age 70 and a half. So how much extra tax liability will you owe because of your RMDs? Well, that depends upon your personal situation and how much income you have from other sources. The key is to understand the concept of a marginal tax bracket. Have you ever been to your tax preparer and looked at your tax return, where it might say, for instance, that your taxes paid last year were 17.3% of your income? Well, you probably know intuitively that there is no 17.3% tax bracket. So how is that calculated? Well, it's based upon an average of all the tax brackets that you're currently in. For example, in that hypothetical example, that taxpayer would have maximized their 10% bracket, maximized their 15% bracket, and had some income in the 25% bracket. The blended rate is an average of 17.3%. However, their marginal bracket is 25%. Since required minimum distributions are going to get stacked on top of the other income sources, those are going to be taxed in the 25% bracket, or maybe even partially in the 28% tax bracket. The reality is that income tax brackets for 2019 are as follows: 10%, 22%, 32%, 12%, 24%, 35%, and finally 37%. But even then, you might think that this is quite simple. I can add up the balance of all my IRAs and 401ks and so on. I can pull the IRS publication 590 and get my IRS assumed life expectancy factor. I can divide the factor into my IRA balance as of December 31st, and that would give me my RMD. Then I'll find out what my marginal tax bracket is, and that will tell me the amount of additional taxes. Well, if you're starting to think that way, not so fast. The reason is that for many, their Social Security benefits are not completely tax-free. Every extra dollar of taxable income generated from any source, such as an RMD, might cause a greater part of your Social Security to be taxed. So a dollar of RMD might actually cause $1.50 of additional taxable income. This is where the calculation gets really difficult, because it becomes kind of a perpetual loop calculation that could change every year based on your personal situation. Chamberlin Financial has tax calculation software in our office that will allow us to plug in your data, and it will calculate the amount of your RMDs, the amount of additional taxes due because of your RMDs, including additional taxes on your Social Security benefits, and whether there are any tax-saving opportunities that you can utilize to partially or wholly offset these RMDs. In our next video, we're going to explore what very well might be the most important thing for you to consider regarding RMDs: whether or not your asset allocation is suitable and sufficient to generate the amount of required minimum distribution needed. In a word, it should be generating at least 3.7% dividend or interest. If you're relying on capital gains each year for your RMDs, then in essence, you're taking them from principal. This goes back to something that your parents have probably told you since you were a young child. Live off your interest and protect your principal. So in our next video, you're going to learn more about what you need to do to accomplish that goal once the age of required minimum distributions is upon you. I know we've covered a lot of information in this video. If you have any questions about anything I've covered, please do not hesitate to give us a call at the number provided, or to send me an email, and we'll be happy to set up a free financial consultation to make sure you avoid any costly mistakes when it comes to your RMDs.